She told me she was no virgin, but I pulled her close. And lost control, Armin had never expected that evening to change his life. The air was cool, with a slight breeze brushing against the trees surrounding the small garden where his friend had organized the gathering. It wasn't a formal event, but the way people laughed and talked, holding glasses of soft drinks and snacks, made it feel almost special. Armin had agreed to come only because his friend insisted. He preferred quiet evenings alone, reading or walking. But something told him that tonight might be different. He stood near the edge of the crowd, his eyes wandering around casually.
People were busy in conversations, forming small groups, laughing at jokes, and sharing stories. And then he saw her.
Sarah. She wasn't loud, but she had a presence that made it impossible for him to look away. Fred.
She was talking to a small group, her expression calm but confident, her gestures smooth and natural. Armin noticed the way she smiled, the way her eyes sparkled when she laughed.
It wasn't the kind of laughter that was forced for attention. It was genuine, warm, and a little mysterious.
He felt an unusual pull toward her.
It was strange because Armin wasn't the kind of person who got drawn to strangers quickly. He often observed people from a distance, careful not to involve himself unnecessarily. But something about Sarah made him want to step closer, to know her, to understand what made her different. As the evening progressed, people moved from the garden to the small patio where lights hung in strings above, creating a warm and soft glow. Music played quietly in the background, and conversations seemed to carry a comfortable rhythm. Armin found himself walking in the direction of the patio, hoping, almost instinctively, that he might get a chance to speak with Sarah. Finally, the opportunity came. Sarah had stepped away from the crowd, leaning slightly against the railing, looking at the sky above as if lost in thought. Armin approached carefully, not wanting to startle her. "Hi," he said, his voice steady despite the nervous flutter in his chest. Sarah turned to him, her eyes meeting his, and for a moment the world seemed to shrink. "Hi," she replied, her voice calm but with a hint of curiosity. There was a pause, neither of them speaking immediately. Armin felt an unusual mix of excitement and hesitation. He wanted to say so much, but the right words seemed to slip away. For finally he managed a simple, "It's a beautiful evening, isn't it?"
She nodded, a small smile appearing on her face. "Yes, it is."
"I always like evenings like this. Quiet, peaceful. You can feel the world slowing down for a moment." Bass. Armin felt that smile reach deep into him. He realized that there was more to her than what people might notice at first glance. There was depth in her presence, a sense of experiences lived, lessons learned, and perhaps hidden pain. He didn't want to rush anything, but he felt a strong desire to connect. They began walking slowly along the garden path, talking about small, everyday things at first. Music, books, movies, the simple joys of life. But gradually, the conversation shifted. Sarah grew quieter, thoughtful, as if she were choosing her words carefully. Then, in a tone that was calm but sincere, she said, "I should tell you something. It's not easy for me to share, but I think it's important." Armin's heart beat faster, though he didn't show it. He nodded gently, encouraging her to continue without pressure. "You can tell me anything," he said softly. "I promise I won't judge." She took a deep breath and spoke. "I've been through a lot. I've made mistakes, faced hardships, and sometimes I feel like people only see what's on the surface. There are parts of me that I've never shared with anyone. I've always been careful with whom I trust, because trust, it's not something I give easily." Armin listened intently. There was no hint of arrogance or defensiveness in her voice. It was honesty, raw and unfiltered. He felt a mixture of admiration and empathy. He wanted to tell her that her past didn't matter, that everyone carries their own stories, but he waited patiently, sensing that this moment was hers to share. She continued, her voice softer now, almost hesitant. I've been hurt before. I've let people in only to realize they didn't care about the real me. That's why I'm cautious. I don't open up easily. I know it might seem strange, but it's how I protect myself. Verse. Armin felt a strange pull toward her. Her vulnerability didn't push him away. It drew him closer.
It made him want to be the person she could trust, the person who could make her feel safe. I understand, he said quietly.
You don't have to explain yourself to me if you don't want to. But I want you to know. I'm here. I want to understand you. Not just the surface, but everything beneath. Sarah looked at him, her eyes searching his face, trying to read the sincerity in his words. He glances around in desperate. She hesitated for a moment, then smiled faintly. But different from what I usually hear. People often try to fix me or judge me, or avoid the parts they find uncomfortable. It's rare to find someone who just listens. They continued walking in silence for a while, the kind of silence that feels comfortable rather than awkward. Armin noticed how relaxed she seemed despite her earlier confession. It was as if sharing even a part of her truth had lifted a weight from her shoulders. Then something unexpected happened. As they reached a quiet corner of the garden, Sarah paused, looking down at the ground. Armin instinctively stepped closer, unsure why he felt the need to be near her. Without thinking, he gently reached out and took her hand. She looked up at him, surprised for a moment, and then didn't pull away. For both of them, it was a moment that carried more weight than words could express. Armin felt a rush of emotions. Care, protectiveness, admiration, and something more intense that he wasn't fully ready to name. Sarah felt a warmth in his gesture, a silent promise that she wasn't alone, that someone could be there for her without judgment. They stayed like that for a few moments, hands together, breathing in the evening air.
Around them, the party continued, but it felt distant, unimportant.
All that mattered was this shared connection, fragile and powerful at the same time. Armin realized something in that instant. He couldn't remember the last time he had felt this way about someone he barely knew.
There was a magnetic pull, an emotional intensity that made him feel alive in a way he hadn't experienced before, and he understood deep down that this was just the beginning.
Sarah, too, felt a shift within herself. She had spent so much of her life guarded and careful, always expecting disappointment.
But here was someone who didn't recoil from her truth, who seemed genuinely willing to meet her where she was. It was both exhilarating and frightening. Eventually, they let go of each other's hands, though the warmth lingered. Armin felt a quiet determination rising in him. He wanted to know her, not to change her, not to fix her, but simply to be a part of her life, to understand the layers she had built around herself. As the night drew on, the garden began to empty, and people started saying their goodbyes. Armin and Sarah found themselves standing near the exit, neither wanting to leave just yet. There was an unspoken understanding that this evening had shifted something between them, something delicate and significant.
Thank you for listening, Sarah said softly, her voice carrying a mix of relief and gratitude.
You don't have to thank me, Armin replied. I want to listen. I want to be here. She smiled faintly, a small but genuine expression that reached her eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke, letting the silence carry the weight of the moment. It was a quiet, intimate understanding, the kind that doesn't need words to be felt. As they finally parted ways that night, Armand felt a sense of anticipation he hadn't known before. He wanted to see her again, to continue learning about her, to be the person who could stand by her through the uncertainties she carried. Breath. And deep inside, he knew that meeting Sarah tonight was no coincidence. Something significant had begun, something that neither of them could yet fully understand, but both could feel in their hearts. Little did they know, this night would mark the start of a journey filled with challenges, trust, and moments of intense emotional connection. The kind of journey that tests hearts, deepens bonds, and reveals the truest parts of ourselves. Break. And as Armand walked home, he couldn't stop thinking about the way Sarah had looked at him, the softness in her voice, and the fragile but undeniable connection that had formed between them in just a single evening. It was a connection that would shape both of their lives in ways they could never have imagined, starting with the simple, quiet moment of honesty and trust in a garden under the stars. After that evening in the garden, Armand couldn't stop thinking about Sarah. Her words, her presence, the way she had allowed him to see a part of her that she usually kept hidden. All of it replayed in his mind like a scene he didn't want to end.
He had met people before, yes, but none had left such a lasting impression.
There was something about her honesty that touched him deeply. He found himself replaying the small moments, the way she had laughed softly at his jokes, the careful pause before she shared something personal, and the brief touch of her hand in the garden. Every detail felt significant. Armand knew he wanted to see her again, but he also understood the delicate nature of her trust. He didn't want to rush anything, yet he couldn't ignore the growing urge to be closer to her. Meanwhile, Sarah had her own thoughts about Armand. She was used to people being drawn to her for superficial reasons, her appearance, her confidence, or her charm. But Armand was different. There was no rush in his movements, no hidden agenda in his words. He had listened. He had accepted her truth without judgment. Breath, that alone made her heart cautious yet curious. She hadn't felt this level of comfort with anyone in a long time, and it frightened her a little. Opening up had always meant vulnerability, and vulnerability often ended in disappointment. But for some reason, with Armand, she felt a strange hope. A few days later, Armand reached out. He sent a simple message asking if she wanted to meet for a coffee.
Sarah hesitated. It had been rare for her to accept invitations from people she barely knew.
But there was something about him. Something that made her feel safe enough to take a chance. She agreed. Break. They met at a small, cozy cafe on the edge of town. It wasn't crowded, and the soft hum of background music created a calm atmosphere. Armand was already there when Sarah arrived. He stood as she walked in, offering a warm smile. Sarah returned it, feeling a little flutter in her chest, a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. They sat across from each other and the conversation began gently. They spoke about their work, their hobbies, and the small joys of life. Armand noticed that Sarah had a way of noticing little things, how people reacted, the small details in her surroundings, and even the expressions on his face. It made him feel seen in a way he rarely experienced. As they talked, Armand realized that Sarah's cautious nature wasn't just about protecting herself. It was about depth. She observed, she listened, she reflected. And beneath that careful exterior, there was warmth, intelligence, and a sense of humor that surfaced at the right moments. He found himself laughing more freely than he had in months, feeling a connection that went beyond ordinary conversation. Sarah, on the other hand, felt a growing trust in Armand. He didn't push her to share more than she was comfortable with. He didn't interrupt or rush her. Instead, he listened, acknowledged her feelings, and shared small pieces of himself in return. It was a delicate balance, one that made her feel that maybe, just maybe, it was safe to open up again. After their coffee, they took a walk in the nearby park. The weather was pleasant, with sunlight filtering through the trees, creating patterns on the path. They talked about dreams, childhood memories, and small moments that shaped who they were. Armand shared stories about his family, his struggles, and his passions. Sarah listened intently, occasionally laughing or nodding in understanding. She began to feel a sense of comfort she hadn't felt in a long time. A feeling that someone truly cared to know her, not just the parts she showed to the world. During the walk, a small moment of hesitation came. Sarah saw a group of people she knew, and her expression tensed. Armin noticed immediately, but without asking, he subtly shifted closer, offering a quiet reassurance.
I'm here, he said softly.
Sarah looked at him, and for a moment her tension eased. That simple gesture told her more than words ever could. It was a silent promise of support, a signal that she wasn't alone. As the day went on, they found themselves sitting on a bench near a fountain. The sound of water created a calming rhythm, and the sunlight reflected off the surface, giving the scene a serene, almost magical quality. Armand glanced at Sarah and noticed the faint smile playing on her lips. It was small, but it carried a depth of emotion, a mix of relief, curiosity, and a hint of hope. Sarah broke the silence first.
I've always been careful about people, she admitted, not because I don't want friends or connections, but because it's easy to trust the wrong people.
And when you do, the fall, it hurts more than anything. Bray. Armin listened quietly. He understood. Grasp through the fluids built up in his lungs, often through disappointment and loss.
I get it,
he said gently. We all have walls we build, but some walls, they're meant to protect us, not to isolate us forever. You don't have to face the world alone, Sarah. Not if you don't want to. Her eyes met his, and for a moment she saw sincerity there. An honesty that wasn't forced, a care that wasn't superficial. She felt a small spark of courage, the kind that nudges someone to take a step forward despite fear. She shared a little more of her past, stories about mistakes she had made, challenges she had faced, and times when she had felt abandoned. Each confession was careful, measured, but it was progress. Armin didn't react with pity or surprise. Instead, he responded with empathy and understanding. He shared small pieces of his own life too, not as a way to compete, but as a way to connect. They began to discover shared experiences, similar fears, and even overlapping dreams. The more they spoke, the more Sarah realized that Armand wasn't just listening, he was understanding. And that realization was powerful. The afternoon faded into early evening, and the park began to empty. The colors of the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. They sat quietly, watching the horizon, enjoying the simple peace of the moment. It was a pause from the chaos of life, a moment of clarity where nothing else seemed to matter except their presence together. Then something unexpected happened. Sarah's hand brushed against Armand's as they adjusted their seating. Neither pulled away immediately. Instead, they lingered in that touch, feeling the quiet intensity of the connection growing between them. It wasn't a dramatic gesture. It was small, subtle, and yet profoundly meaningful. Armand spoke softly, breaking the silence. You don't have to share everything all at once, he said. Breaths. I just want to be here for you, step by step. No pressure, no expectations. Just. Sarah looked at him, her heart racing slightly. She nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of safety and acceptance. It was a fragile feeling, but real. And in that moment, she realized that maybe she could allow herself to trust someone again. They left the park slowly, walking side by side. Each step was a quiet affirmation of the connection they were building. Words weren't always necessary. Sometimes the silence between them carried more meaning than any conversation could. And as they parted ways that evening, there was a mutual understanding. This was just the beginning of something meaningful, a bond built not on appearances or assumptions, but on honesty, trust, and the willingness to be vulnerable. As Armin walked home, he reflected on the day. Every smile, every shared story, every moment of silence had left a mark on him. He felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness.
Farah was a challenge, not in a negative way, but in a way that made him want to be better, to rise to the level of trust she was offering him.
And he understood that this trust wasn't something to take lightly. It was a gift, rare and precious. Sarah, too, thought about the day as she reached her apartment, but she felt emotions she hadn't expected. Curiosity, hope, and a tentative sense of joy. She realized that she had let someone into her world, someone who had seen parts of her she rarely allowed anyone to see. And though it scared her, it also felt right. Maybe, just maybe, she could allow herself to hope again. That night, both of them went to bed with thoughts of the other lingering in their minds. It wasn't an obsession, nor was it a fleeting infatuation. It was something deeper, a connection that had begun with honesty and trust, and that was only just starting to grow. And as they drifted off to sleep, neither of them could predict where this journey would lead, but both felt an undeniable certainty that it was worth exploring. Little did they know, the path ahead would test their trust, their patience, and their courage, but it would also teach them the beauty of vulnerability, the power of emotional connection, and the extraordinary strength that comes from being truly seen by someone else. And for now, that was enough. Days passed after that afternoon in the park, but Armin and Sarah couldn't stop thinking about each other.
Messages flowed between them, simple greetings that turned into longer conversations. They shared stories, joked about small things, and slowly began weaving their lives together in tiny, meaningful ways.
But life had a way of testing even the strongest connections. One morning, Sarah received an unexpected call from an old friend. It was a person who had hurt her in the past, someone who had once broken her trust. Hearing that voice brought back memories she hadn't revisited in years, memories of betrayal, disappointment, and the fear that trusting again only led to pain. But Sarah felt a surge of anxiety. Sarah felt a surge of anxiety. Her first instinct was to retreat, to close off and not share what she was feeling. She knew that reaching out to our man could either help her feel safe or make her feel exposed again. She stared at her phone, unsure if she wanted to tell him, and finally decided to write a simple message. "I'm not sure if I'm ready to talk today."
When Armand read the message, his heart sank slightly. He could sense her hesitation, her fear.
But he didn't react with anger or frustration. Instead, he replied gently, "Take your time. I'm here when you're ready." Armand wasn't pushing her. Right. He was patient, understanding, and willing to wait. That small gesture, though simple, meant more than she could express.
Later that day, Armand decided to surprise her by visiting her favorite bookstore, a place she had once mentioned in passing. He didn't intend to intrude. He just wanted to be near her, to show that he cared without demanding anything.
When Sarah saw him there, her initial reaction was surprise, quickly followed by a shy smile. "What are you doing here?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "I remembered you mentioned this place," Armin said with a warm smile. "I thought I'd see if you'd like some company," then nodded. "Sure, I'd like that." Inside the bookstore, they wandered between shelves of books, talking quietly. Armand noticed how Sarah's eyes lit up when she found a book she loved. He realized that these small, seemingly insignificant details, her favorite authors, her favorite genres, were pieces of who she was, and learning them, observing them, made him feel closer to her in a way nothing else had. But even in these calm moments, tension lingered beneath the surface. Sarah's past experiences had left scars that didn't heal quickly. She sometimes flinched at unexpected gestures, questioned intentions she shouldn't have to, and doubted the sincerity of kindness. Armin saw these moments and felt a mix of concern and determination. He didn't want to overwhelm her, but he also couldn't ignore the growing attachment he felt. After leaving the bookstore, they decided to walk along a nearby street lined with small cafes and lights. The evening was cool, and the air carried a faint scent of rain that had fallen earlier. Sarah walked slightly ahead, lost in thought. Armand stayed close but didn't crowd her. "You seem quiet," he said gently. "Are you okay?" Sarah hesitated before answering. "I'm fine," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Armand knew she was holding something back. Breath. He had learned to notice the subtleties, the slight hesitation, the tension in her posture, the fleeting expressions that betrayed her inner feelings. He reached out and lightly touched her arm, just enough to get her attention. "You don't have to hide anything from me," he said softly. "Whatever it is, we can face it together." Her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. She had been so used to facing challenges alone that the idea of someone being there for her without judgment was both comforting and frightening. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then slowly, she began to open up. She told him about her old friend, the one who had hurt her years ago. She described how their friendship had started with trust and warmth, only to end in disappointment. She shared the feelings of betrayal, the self-doubt, and the fear of trusting anyone again. Armand listened, saying nothing except small words of reassurance. He didn't interrupt or try to fix her feelings. He just allowed her to speak, giving her space to release what she had been carrying. By the time she finished, Sarah felt a small weight lift from her chest. She realized that speaking her truth, even in fragments, had made her feel lighter. And she felt a deeper trust toward Armand, who had simply been there, patient and understanding. Armand, for his part, felt a strong surge of empathy. He realized that her past pain wasn't just a story. It had shaped who she was, her caution, and her resilience. And he felt honored that she trusted him enough to share even a small piece of it. He gently suggested, "We can take things slow, step by step. You don't have to face anything alone anymore." Sarah nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. That evening, they found themselves sitting on a low wall by a small fountain, watching the water ripple in the soft light. Words were no longer necessary. The silence between them was filled with understanding, trust, and an unspoken promise to support each other. However, life wasn't done testing them yet. The next day, Sarah received another call, this time from a coworker spreading rumors about her personal life. It wasn't malicious, but it stirred feelings of anxiety and vulnerability. She felt the old fear of judgment creeping back, threatening to undo the progress she had made in trusting Armand. Instead of retreating completely, Sarah decided to share the incident with Armand. His reaction was calm, protective, and reassuring. He reminded her that she was not defined by other people's opinions, and that their bond was built on honesty and care, not gossip or judgment. Once again, his support gave her courage. Over the next few days, Armand and Sarah continued to spend time together. Breaths. They met for long walks, visited quiet parks, and even attended a small art exhibition. Each interaction was a chance to learn more about each other, to understand boundaries, and to slowly build trust. But even in these small victories, moments of doubt arose. Sarah sometimes worried that she was being too open too quickly. Armand, aware of her hesitation, carefully balanced his actions, showing support, but never forcing intimacy. It was a delicate dance of patience, empathy, and emotional awareness. One afternoon, as they sat in a small cafe watching people pass by, Sarah admitted something she had never told anyone before.
Bow. Sometimes I feel like I carry a wall around me, even when I don't want to. I want to let people in, but I'm afraid of being hurt again.
Her man reached across the table, placing his hand lightly over hers. I understand, he said.
And I don't want to rush you. Walls are there for a reason, but maybe...
Together, we can make space for trust. We can take it, one step at a time. Sarah felt a warmth spread through her chest. She realized that she had never felt this level of patience, understanding, and genuine care from anyone before. It wasn't just about affection. It was about someone recognizing her fears, respecting them, and still choosing to stay by her side. As evening approached, they walked along a quiet street lined with old buildings and soft streetlights. The calm of the night mirrored the calm growing between them.
Armin noticed Sarah occasionally glancing at him, a subtle smile playing on her lips.
It was in these small gestures that he felt the strength of their connection, the bond that was slowly solidifying despite the challenges. By the end of the day, both of them understood that trust was fragile and vulnerability could be frightening. But they also realized that facing challenges together, sharing fears, and being patient with each other could create something stronger than either of them had imagined. That night, as they parted ways, there was no dramatic declaration, no rush of emotion, just a quiet understanding. Both knew that the road ahead would test them, that their fears might resurface, and that life might throw unexpected challenges in their path. But they also knew that they had begun something rare, a connection built on trust, patience, and mutual understanding. And as they walked away from each other that evening, both Armin and Sarah carried a sense of hope, a quiet certainty that whatever challenges came next, they could face them together. Little did they know, the true test of their bond was just around the corner. Race. Something unexpected would soon arrive that would push their trust, patience, and courage to the limit. And only by relying on each other completely could they overcome it. The days following the recent challenges were quiet, but the tension of what had passed still lingered in Armin and Sarah's minds. They had faced small tests of trust, and though they had grown closer, both knew life could be unpredictable. Each moment together had become precious, and both had learned that connection required patience, understanding, and courage.
One weekend, Armand suggested a small trip outside the city, a quiet place near a river where they could relax and enjoy nature.
Sarah hesitated at first, unsure if stepping into something more intimate and personal so quickly was wise. But she also realized that the idea of spending uninterrupted time with Armand, without distractions or judgments, felt safe and comforting. She agreed. The morning of the trip, the air was crisp and refreshing. They drove together, laughing over small jokes and sharing stories of childhood memories. For Sarah, it felt like a breath of fresh air, an escape from the constant worries and pressures of daily life. For Armin, it was an opportunity to show Sarah that moments of peace and joy could exist even amidst challenges. When they reached the riverside, the scenery took their breath away. The river sparkled under the morning sun, trees swayed gently in the wind, and birds chirped melodiously from afar. They walked along the riverbank, talking quietly, observing nature and enjoying each other's company. The silence between them felt natural, not awkward. It was a silence filled with mutual understanding and the comfort of being in each other's presence. As they sat on a large rock near the water, Armand noticed Sarah staring thoughtfully at the flowing river. "You've been quiet," he said softly, breaking the gentle silence. Sarah hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Inspiration. I've just been thinking about everything. About the past, about trust, and about how rare it is to find someone who actually listens without judgment." Armin reached out and gently took her hand. I know, he said softly, and I hope you know that I'm here for you. No matter what, I want to face everything with you, together, Britt. For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt tears threaten to fall. It wasn't sadness, it was relief. Relief that someone saw her, understood her, and didn't run away. Relief that someone could make her feel safe, even when the past had taught her to expect betrayal. She squeezed his hand gently, a small gesture that said more than words ever could. They spent hours by the river, walking, talking, and occasionally sitting in comfortable silence. Armin noticed how Sarah laughed more freely here, how her eyes sparkled when she spoke about things she loved, and how her walls, though still present, seemed to soften gradually. It was a delicate process, one that required patience, empathy, and mutual respect, breaths, and Armand felt honored to witness it. But just as their day seemed perfect, life presented another challenge. Bray. While walking along a small trail near the river, Sarah slipped on a damp rock and twisted her ankle. She let out a small cry of pain, and Armand rushed to her side immediately. His protective instinct took over. Are you okay? He asked, concern evident in his voice. I think I twisted it, she said, wincing as she tried to stand. Armand helped her sit down carefully. Don't try to move too much. We'll get you some help. For the first time, Sarah felt the vulnerability she had long avoided. She was not in control, and she had to rely on someone else. On our man. She looked at him, uncertain, but saw nothing but care and calm in his expression. And in that moment, she realized how much trust she had developed in him. Armin gently helped her onto his back so he could carry her to the car.
At first, Sarah felt embarrassed, unused to being cared for in such a direct way.
But the warmth and patience in Armand's actions slowly replaced that embarrassment with gratitude. She understood that this moment was not about weakness. It was about allowing someone to care for her without fear or judgment. The rest of the day passed quietly. Sarah rested at home, and Armand stayed by her side, helping her with small things, making her tea, and keeping her company. It was in these small acts of care that their bond deepened even further. Sarah began to understand that true connection wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was about patience, presence, and consistent support. Over the next week, they continued to spend time together, slowly exploring their emotional bond. They shared more personal stories, moments of fear, moments of courage, and moments when they had felt completely alone in the world. Each story revealed a new layer of their personalities, building understanding and intimacy without pressure. One evening, as they sat on a balcony watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, Sarah spoke quietly. I've realized something. I've been holding so much back all my life because I was scared. Scared of being hurt, scared of trusting, scared of letting anyone see the real me. But with you, it's different.
I feel safe. I feel like I can be myself without pretending or hiding.
Armin smiled, taking her hand gently. That's all I've ever wanted. To be someone you can rely on. But hide. You don't have to hide anything from me, Sarah. Not ever. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. It wasn't just about comfort or companionship. It was about finding someone who saw her, truly saw her, and still chose to stay. That realization gave her a sense of peace she had not experienced in years. As days turned into weeks, their relationship continued to grow. They faced small challenges together: work, stress, minor misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. But each time they communicated openly and supported one another. Sarah learned that vulnerability was not weakness, and Armin learned the depth of patience and empathy. One weekend, Armin suggested revisiting the river where Sarah had twisted her ankle. He wanted to show her that challenges didn't have to define moments. They could also become opportunities for connection and growth. Sarah agreed, feeling confident that she could trust him completely now. At the river, they sat together, watching the water flow calmly. Armin spoke gently about life's unpredictability and the importance of having someone who stands by you through challenges. Sarah listened, feeling the truth in his words. She realized the true connection wasn't about avoiding difficulties. It was about facing them together, hand in hand. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in warm shades of orange and pink, Sarah leaned slightly on Armand's shoulder. It was a quiet, unspoken moment, full of trust, comfort, and mutual understanding. Neither of them felt the need for dramatic words. The bond they had built spoke louder than anything else. They walked back slowly, talking about hopes for the future, dreams they had shared with few others, and the small joys that made life meaningful. Sarah felt a sense of clarity she had never known. She could be vulnerable, she could trust, and she could find joy again without fear. That evening, as they said goodbye, there was no need for grand declarations. A simple hug, a shared smile, and a lingering look conveyed everything. Both understood that their journey was ongoing, that life would continue to test them, but that the foundation they had built, trust, patience, understanding, and care, was strong enough to weather anything. In the following months, they continued to grow together. They faced challenges, celebrated small victories, and learned the art of balancing individuality with shared experiences. Each day was a lesson in empathy, respect, and emotional courage, and with every passing moment, Sarah realized she had found something rare, a connection built not on superficial attraction, but on honesty, trust, and the willingness to be truly seen. Armin, too, reflected on the journey. He had entered Sarah's life cautiously, unsure of what to expect. But in learning to respect her boundaries, listen deeply, and care without expectation, he had discovered a bond far deeper than he had imagined. It was a bond that challenged him to be patient, to be understanding, and to be present, not just in good moments, but in the moments of doubt and fear. One evening, as they watched the city lights together, Sarah spoke softly. "I never thought I'd find someone who could see me, all of me, and still choose to stay." Armin smiled, taking her hand gently. "I'm not going anywhere. Whatever comes our way, we'll face it together." Sarah felt a warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't just love. It was trust, respect, and the comfort of knowing that someone valued her entirely. And for the first time in a long time, she felt completely at peace. The story of Armand and Sarah didn't end with dramatic events or shocking twists. It ended in quiet moments of understanding, small gestures of care, and the steady growth of trust. It was a story of two people learning to navigate life together, facing fears, sharing vulnerabilities, and finding joy in the presence of someone who truly understood them. And in that understanding, they found something extraordinary, not just a connection, but a partnership built on honesty, patience, and unwavering support. A connection that could weather any storm, and a bond that would continue to grow, quietly but powerfully, as long as they chose to nurture it together.